here. Larry Holder, Jeff Duncan here with you at the Saints facility. Saints just picked Sheldon Rankins, Louisville defensive tackle. To me, it's probably the most easily predicted pick in every mock draft in human creation. But to me, I think it's the best pick for them. They avoided the temptation to go after some red flag guys, whether it's medical or character. And I know as a Louisville guy, you're happy.
Yeah, I've got to endorse that pick.
Exactly.
But, I think you're right. I think it might be the rare case where the best player available also fit their need. So it's the perfect scenario. It's a win-win for the Saints. I think when we talk to Saints officials in a little while, they'll probably say he ranked very high on their board, maybe at the top of their board, because this was a guy pretty much widely praised, the selection by draft analysts across the board. And this was a guy I know that you picked in your mocks because he fills a glaring hole on their defensive line and should help the rest of the defensive line.
Right. You look at Rankins, he played 3-4 defensive end at times at Louisville. Sometimes when they'd have 4 guys up front, he would play the end spot. But, of course, the Saints will use him as defensive tackle, probably a 3 technique. But I think his versatility brings something to the table. But I do think it does say something to where the Saints, look, Miles Jack fell, and everybody knows the knee is an issue. And, of course, the insane story of Laramie Tunsil, how he fell tonight. I think talent-wise, he's probably top 5 talent on the Saints board, but I think the Saints, A, didn't need a tackle, and B, didn't want to deal with the headache, so they moved on. I mean, and they did this last year when they took a tackle. Best player available. I don't think they were going to do that. Sheldon Rankins probably fit in their cloud, fits a need, safe pick, and someone who can come in and can probably contribute right away.
And look, let's face it, the Saints are not in position to take any risks right now.
Right.
I mean, they are coming off back-to-back 7-9 seasons. Their defense was porous a year ago. They've got to get better, and they can't afford to miss on any picks, especially when you've only got 6 in this entire draft. Now, maybe they make some more moves and pick up some extra picks, but with this pick, they had to be safe, and they couldn't afford a risk. And I think Rankins was exactly what they needed to go on the start of this offseason of fixing that defense.
And I'm sure players are thrilled because they knew that spot needed to be addressed. And I'm sure the coaching staff thrilled. They knew that spot needed to be addressed. And he comes, and you, I think you put on Twitter right after we did a conference call with Rankins, just kind of a no-nonsense guy.
Right.
Just seems like he's ready to come in to work. And I think that's kind of followed him throughout the draft process. Shined at the Senior Bowl, did well at the Combine. No character issues, productive at Louisville. Look, you look at his stats here, 53 tackles last year, team high with 8 sacks as a defensive tackle. I mean, that's pretty big for a team that, look, they're not playing cupcakes all the time. I mean, those are good stats for someone in the interior defensive line.
Well, the other thing that stands out to me is he had a couple interceptions. He returned a fumble against Virginia, so he can make plays. He's a very good athlete, which the Saints need. Look, they need that interior pass rusher to open things up on the outside. We saw Cam Jordan tonight, defensive end, was tweeting repeatedly his endorsement of this pick because he knows it should help him on the outside. They really haven't had this kind of player for a while. Maybe you have to go back to Leroy Glover to find a guy like a 3 technique that can get after the quarterback. And we've seen in the league players like Aaron Donald, other players excel in this role. Geno Atkins is another guy he's compared to. An athletic interior pass rusher can actually create more problems than these guys that come around the perimeter.
And as a pass rusher himself, it looks like they hope they could probably develop him into that rather than just a space eater. Versatility brings a big step to the table.
Yeah, and you mentioned him playing outside defensive end. I think he's probably going to move around the defensive line a lot like the way they use Cam Jordan, find mismatches. And I think he's going to be a guy, because he's a 4-year player, a guy that's going to step in and probably play right away. He's not going to take a lot of time. Even if he doesn't start, he's going to be in those sub packages right away in the Saints when they get in these passing situations, because this is a guy that played a lot of football at Louisville.
Now, again, we're live right now, and I'm wondering what's the next step for the Saints. It wouldn't completely stun me if they tested trying to move back up into the first round, maybe
Right.
for a defensive end like a Kevin Dodd, somebody like that. Again, we're not watching the draft right now. He might be off the board for all I know, but they could be going back in there. But going forward, it looks like it lined up basically what we all thought. Defensive tackle Rankins. What's next? Do you feel like maybe later tonight or going into tomorrow?
Well, I think there's two clear holes on the defensive line. One was the 3 technique, and look, this is what Sean Payton said to you all down in Florida.
He didn't
right?
hide it.
He didn't hide it at all. There is no hiding. Everybody knows they need also a left defensive end. So I think right now that's the way you go, assuming they've got somebody high on their board that would be available there. If there's a player, a guard, for instance, that might
Right.
be graded in a grade tier higher than that defensive end, I think they'll take the guard. I don't think they're going to stray too far from their board, but at some point they've got to get a defensive end because they're just too young right there right now. They don't have enough talent, and you can never have enough pass rushers.
Yeah, so but I think overall the sentiment, I know from me and I know from you, this pick is probably the best pick at that time they could have made. It's not a frills pick, it probably isn't a sexy pick, and yet it's a pick that is absolutely necessary for this defense that's been pretty rough 3 of the last 4 years.
Yeah, and Sean Payton said he goes to bed at night thinking about how to improve the defense. He said that a long time ago, and I think he's going to be sleeping better tonight after this pick.
All right, well, I hope we didn't bore you here on Facebook, but we'll come back. If they make another pick, we will be back talking about that pick later on, but you can check us out all weekend here in our Facebook feed on our NOLA.com account. So for Larry Holder, Jeff Duncan, thanks for hopping on.